Hi there, my name's Steve Unwin. I'm a lecturer at the University of Birmingham in environmental change, and I am here to talk to you a little bit about my research and how I got to where I'm doing the research I'm currently doing. So I graduated way back last century in 1993 with a science degree in ecology and 1997 with a veterinary science degree, both from Massey University in New Zealand. I'm also a recognised specialist in zoo health management as a diplomat of the European College of Zoological Medicine. So that's a fancy way of saying that I'm the equivalent of a medical doctor consultant in a hospital, but my focus is on zoo animals, both in captivity and with wildlife. So my track to my current research has been through a clinical line, but as a wildlife veterinarian. And I've had the great privilege to be able to work as such in countries as diverse as Thailand, Australia, Cameroon, and Central Africa. But most recently, I've been a veterinary clinician at Chester Zoo here in the UK. So I'm also as a guest lecturer at universities of Liverpool and Chester and the Royal Veterinary College in those sorts of areas of clinical research. But as I mentioned, I'm currently based at the University of Birmingham School of Biosciences as a lecturer in biosystems and environmental change. Now, as a wildlife vet, my clinical research focused mainly on infectious disease investigations, in particular zoonoses in captive wildlife settings. So this was way before what we're currently going through with SARS-CoV-2, but as a zoonosis, that's also an area of interest. So methodologically, this was based more on what we call the disease risk analysis process. And I was looking at species as diverse as from chimpanzees to red birds of paradise. This risk analysis process, figuring out where we have data gaps and trying to figure out what the likelihood and consequence of any zoonotic infection would be getting into a non-human animal. And most of these were coming from human sources. So it's slightly different to a lot of the research you may see, which is looking at what is the risk of disease getting into us as humans. So I was sort of looking the other direction. But this focus led to more disease management research as to how we go about answering these questions. So I was also lucky enough to be a veterinary coordinator for an organization called the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance. And this brought together people working as practitioners with primates in the field, with academia and other colleagues in industry. And I'm also currently, I operate as a co-facilitator role for the Orangutan Veterinary Advisory Group in Southeast Asia. So as you can see, a lot of my research from a species focus is now currently working with apes. But both of these areas have huge data gaps in what we do, what we don't know about zoonotic infections and infectious diseases in general in other non-human apes. So I started to look at, as a big area of research, and how this idea of what we call conservation medicine, which is a veterinary part of a One Health program, and how we educate people who are both practitioners as clinicians through to policymakers when we're looking at how governments manage disease through populations. And this leads us into this idea of One Health, which is when we're dealing with specifically zoonotic infections that travel between humans, non-human animals, and the environment. So both the Orangutan Veterinary Advisory Group and the Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance have pretty extensive networks looking at ape health. And why we're able to improve the clinical abilities of capacity building for people working locally as primate and wildlife veterinarians, we're also able to highlight areas of research that were being asked by researchers in the field, but they didn't quite have the capacity to be able to investigate those. So these are the issues of disease and infection that travel through non-human primates. So now that I'm based here at the University of Birmingham, I've continued to collaborate with these previous industry and academic partners in these One Health focused research. And so some examples, what we're working on right now is we're looking at the Orangutan Gut Microbiome. as they're seeing if there's a follow through of a reduction in biodiversity of the gut microbiome as we see in humans. And I'm working here with the Primate Microbiome Project, which is based at the University of Nebraska. They have a website, and it's very interesting if you want to go and check that out. But also because of my previous clinical work, we're combining this with clinical colleagues in Indonesia and Malaysia, with the European Association of Zoos and Aquaria here in Europe, and also with human microbiome expertise here at Birmingham. So this follows the One Health ideal of an interdisciplinary approach to look at a particular conservation-based health issue. Another team I'm working with is based primarily at the University of Minnesota, and we're looking at specific diseases in apes. And the two we're looking at, well, the first one we're looking at is tuberculosis, and we've been doing that for a number of years. But since the pandemic, SARS-CoV-2, the epidemiology and diagnostic capability when managing these types of either epidemics or pandemics globally is very there's again a lot of data gaps in how we can do that. And as I speak to you now, there currently has not been any non-human ape infection with SARS-CoV-2 to at least present as COVID-19, but there have been many cases of tuberculosis in non-human apes from a human origin source. And so this ties in with the general research of mine of looking at One Health issues, but from a wildlife perspective. Now, tied in with this, with fellow researchers at the University of Birmingham, who are looking at the drivers of issues in ape conservation in particular, through it and ways of managing that in captivity, with what we call the enclosure design tool team. And again, please check out on the University of Birmingham's website about that. But their focus is primarily in behavioral ecology. And me as a lowly clinician working with wildlife have developed over the years an understanding that everything that we look at in health has a basis in ecology, including human ecology if you're looking at human health. And so that ties in with the One Health idea. So all of this work is part of a developing global ape One Health network initiative that all of us together are putting all these different areas of focused research, be it in the lab or in clinical settings. As a bit of an aside, but also tied in with this, is I mentioned at the very beginning this idea of disease risk analysis, and a focus of this is how we communicate what we are doing, both from a disease output issue as well as just a general scientific communication on what the relative risk is. We call this risk communication. So part of this effort to make this whole sort of One Health system a bit more understandable, certainly from an ape point of view. I'm currently co-author and co-editor on the latest State of the Apes publication from an organization called the Arcus Foundation. These are a series of volumes that are freely available through their website, but they look at the at global environmental issues and their specific effect on apes, including the human ape. So of industries such as logging and mining, the effect of illegal trade. But the volume I'm involved in is obviously looking at disease and health, and disease and health specifically in the Anthropocene. So the time that we are living in now, where human impact has such a huge effect on the ecology of the planet. But this also fits into that One Health paradigm. And so with this communication idea, the audience for these volumes includes decision makers at government and UN level, and those working with apes in both captivity and the wild and academia, as well as general interested parties to try and gather this information, say this is where we are in our state of knowledge and research, to be able to focus on where those areas of research which we need to carry on. And part of that is why we're looking at areas at the importance of the microbiome as an indicator of how protected the system, or how robust a system, an internal system, is at fighting off external threats of infection, and highlighting big issues of what diseases are a threat to our non-human ape counterparts, and hence why we're concentrating on SARS-CoV-2 at the moment for obvious reasons, and diseases like tuberculosis, and going forward into the future, other diseases such as Ebola.